I am an environmental activist, and I have been for a really long time. And I went through all of the stages an activist can possibly go through. Starting at the age of 6, I learned at school that there is something called fossil fuels and climate change, and that the world's going to end. I was freaked out. At the end of the video that my teacher showed me, there was a slide about now it is upon the next generation to save the planet. So I told myself, oh my God, that has to be me. I am the next generation. I have to save the planet. I went into the next phase of my environmentalism. I was trying to find for solutions. I was running around my town, hanging out these stickers, posters. I was a big advocate against plastic straws. You can see it on the screen. You can live without straws, hanging around my city. Only later I found that actually only 0.025% of all plastic is actually the plastic straws. I was also a big advocate for recycling. I thought that recycling can solve our plastic issue. So again, there was a poster saying, don't be an ignorant, do you recycle? Or 2 million plastic bags are thrown every minute, do you recycle? Only later I found again that only 9% of all plastic actually ever gets recycled. The percentage is a little bit higher in the European Union, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't recycle. That's the bare minimum we can all do, but we cannot recycle our way out of this problem. So then I went on to another stage of environmentalism, when I wanted to be completely zero waste, zero emissions, completely like 100% perfect. I would literally not drink if I didn't have my own bottle. I would not buy a plastic bottle in order to save the environment. And I learned the hard way that this lifestyle is simply not really possible in the real world. Today, I'm more of a pragmatic environmentalist. I still don't drive a car. I still take my own grocery bag to the store. I still don't eat meat, and I still collect trash whenever I see some around me. But I learned that environmentalism cannot be done 100% in an individual way. So I was even able to enjoy my own prom dance when the bartender just slipped the plastic straw in my drink, and I was actually able to enjoy my dance. My name is Rozárie Haškovcová. I'm an environmental activist and a greenfluencer. Today, I talk to hundreds of thousands of Czech people, communicating and telling them about the complex environmental issues. I go out and lecture at high schools and elementary schools about the environment. I organize community swaps. Those are places where people come together and exchange things they no longer use, so they don't end in the landfill. But yet, after hearing all of this, there are people on Twitter, of course it's on Twitter, who will call me a hypocrite for presenting while holding a piece of paper in my hand. A paper. If I was to make a self-development speech, I would say, see, you can never please anyone, which is true. But the conclusion that I want to draw here, that environmentalism cannot be done perfectly. And I want to answer the most asked question that I get all the time. So what can I do for the environment, but like really? Before I go into that, helping the environment means different things to different people, and the topic is quite complicated. Look at this graph. It clearly shows that it doesn't make much sense to trying not to use plastic bags. It makes much more sense to not take a transatlantic flight. The problem with this graph is that it only shows the reduction of CO2 emissions, right? CO2 emissions, that's a greenhouse gas that contributes to climate change. And the problem with plastic bags is not climate change, right? The problem with plastic bag is the plastic itself. It's a plastic pollution, it's microplastics. So I'd like to introduce you to this next diagram. It is done by the University of Stockholm, where they divide the environmental issues into 9 categories. There is the green circle, which is the safety operating zone, in which humanity can thrive and develop happily for generations to come. After crossing this green circle, we are already hitting some of our tipping points, and yeah, it's not looking very great with us. And we already crossed 6 out of 9 of these boundaries. However, I don't want to make this too pessimistic and depressing. What I want to show here is that climate change is only one of those 9 issues, and that the issues of environment are very different. So we have the problem of novel entities, which are microplastics, plastics entering our system, ecosystem, and climate change, and then all of the others. Take straws, for example. So we have the plastic straws. They were banned, and we all know that they were banned because they were getting stuck in the throats of turtles. So they were bad for the environment in terms of plastics, in terms of novel entities. But they were not that much of a problem in terms of climate change. Metal straws, on the other hand, are okay on the waste side, right? You reuse it over and over again. You don't just simply throw it and no turtle is going to choke on it. But in order to produce a metal straw, you need quite a lot of energy. And this energy usually comes from fossil fuels. And metal straws then contribute to climate change in a very small portion, but you get the analogy here. So very often solving one issue of, for example, plastic waste, then means more problems in terms of climate change and vice versa. The problems are very complex. If it was easy, we wouldn't have the problem currently. So if I was to recommend you some things that you can do individually that are going to have the most significant impact, it would be these 3. There was a survey done by The Guardian, and they interviewed about 300 climate scientists who are in charge of writing the IPCC report. 60% of them agreed that reducing the amount of flights we take as individuals is one of the most impactful things you can do for the environment, climate. The second would be eating less meat, introducing more plants into your diet, slowly transitioning to a more plant-based one. About 30% of scientists agree on that. And the third one would be to change where we get our electricity, whether it be placing a solar panel on our roof or changing the supplier of our electricity for a more green one. Also, about 30% of scientists agree on that. So there are some 3 things you can do to help climate. Then I have another 3 things that you can do to help consumption, overconsumption. The first thing would be to buy less, obviously. The problem that we're facing is that we are consuming way more than we actually need and that the world can sustain itself. Second would be to try to buy secondhand. This is my laptop that I bought last year, and that was secondhand. And then the third would be to separate bio-waste. That is a great way to reduce your general waste, but it also helps fighting climate change. So these are some steps that I would generally recommend. The problem with this is that even if I never ever create any emissions, even if I never ever generate any waste, even if we all in this room decide to be 100% environmentally friendly, nothing is going to change about the fact that the majority of electricity that goes into people's homes comes from the burning of fossil fuels. In 2005, British Petrol invested $100 million into a professional PR agency that coined the idea of individual carbon footprint into the society. They basically made the environmental issues about not what they are doing and the fact that our society is built around fossil fuels, but rather they changed the narrative into let's shame environmentalists for using a paper on Twitter. Or we should argue that, oh, you used 1 straw and you used 2 straws, oh, you should fight then. Who's the enemy here? And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm telling you all of that while standing here in my slow fashion, second-handed, thrifted outfit, vegan leather shoes, fueled by a vegan breakfast. But yet I'm telling you that individual actions don't make a lot of sense, because that is not true. I am a big believer and advocate for trying and starting at our own homes. And we can see that it is making an impact. These are some of the headlines from the previous year, half a year. We can see that the demand for meat is slowly decreasing. There is an article from Germany, but we can see this trend, especially among young people, all over Europe and the Western world. We can see that young people especially opt rather for second-handed clothing items, electronic devices, rather than buying new ones. We can also see an increasing demand for plant milks, plant alternatives to, yogurt, cheese, and so on. Individual actions do matter, because we are not just individuals in our own homes that we, I do and recycle this and I do and do that in my own home. But we as individuals are part of a collective. We are part of the society, we are part of the system, and therefore we can also change it. And we don't all have to be environmentalists, right? We don't all have to be professional eco-activists, that the society wouldn't work that way. This is my mom. My mom is a designer, an architect. She's not really, an eco-activist. She's not going around with transparents. But she is an eco-activist in a sense. So what she does is that whenever renovating a new flat or a house, she doesn't throw out the furniture, but she instead thinks about it and tries to give this furniture to people in need for free or for a small charge. Or she works with companies, this is for example a carpet company, that uses recycled plastic to create carpets. So she uses these carpets in all of her designs, and through that, she's already making the world a better place. We don't need 100% perfect environmentalists. We need environmentally thinking doctors, teachers, bankers, scientists, entrepreneurs. We need the environmental consciousness to get into all different fields of our life. Here I have a graph. This graph shows the amount of deforestation happening in the Amazon rainforest. And you can clearly see that there's a weird thing happening between the year 2022 and 2023. There's a huge decrease in the amount of areas in the Amazon rainforest deforested. One could ask why. Is it because we all collectively decided to boycott products or services that promote deforestation? That would be very nice, but no. There was a tiny thing that happened in Brazil. They had the elections. They changed the president of the country for one that was driving deforestation for the last couple of years to a president that is more environmentally conscious and who actually wants to protect the forests, the Amazon rainforest. And this is only due to one person in charge. Now, it's not that pink, green, beautiful. There are some issues, I'm not gonna lie. But politicians have a serious impact on how the world's gonna look like. So even if you cannot really reduce the amount of meat you eat, even if you cannot limit the amount of times you go and travel by plane, there's one more thing you can do. The most effective thing you can do that will literally take you 15 minutes. 76% of experts say that voting is the one simple solution that can help us with protecting the environment, protecting the climate in the most significant way. So if there was one thing that I want you to get out of this speech, it would be to go and vote. Vote for leaders and candidates that are candidating for the environment and for the people. Thank you.